They thought he was above the law. His wives, his kids, even his faithful followers thought he was all powerful. But in that courtroom, when the judge asked for answers, Kody Brown had to face reality, and the judge was not impressed. The courtroom was filled to its limits. Every bench strained under the pressure of people sitting on it. Every whisper felt a ripple of expectation. This was not just another hearing. This was the moment of truth everyone had been waiting for. The downfall of Kody Brown, the guy who once stood tall on reality television as a patriarch, was going to be revealed before them. The air was heavy with anticipation, thick and tense. Court reporters fidgeted with their glasses and read through their notes. Cameras snapped continuously, capturing every flinch, every drip of sweat on Kody's brow. Ex-fans, ex-wives, and spectator rubbernecks craned forward, their faces hopping between curiosity, outrage, and barely contained satisfaction. And then, the crack of the gavel, the noise was so crisp, it caused heads to jerk. The buzz of discussion ceased on the spot. The resulting silence was not empty. It hummed with anticipation. The judge, a strict woman with a sharp glance and authoritative demeanor, leaned forward from her bench. She did not hesitate over small talk. Her voice thundered, resolute and unyielding. "Mr. Brown, this court needs an answer. Where did the money go?" The question fell like a hammer, more weighty than the gavel itself. All eyes shifted to Kody Brown. There he sat in the defendant's table, a man who once had exuded confidence, sure of his position in the world. His hair, once styled perfectly for television, now lay limp and asymmetrical. His knuckles turned white as he clutched the edge of the table. He attempted to keep his cool, but his eyes gave him away, flicking uneasily between the judge and the papers, then to his lawyer in a frantic hunt for encouragement. There was none to be had, not here, not today. The room was still, but the stillness was deafening. They all thought the same thing. This was the question Kody couldn't avoid anymore. He had avoided it in interviews, sidestepped it with his wives, waved it off when fans wondered. But sworn in a court of law, there was no dodging. His lawyer leaned in, hissing urgently. Kody nodded, swallowed hard, and attempted to steady himself. Clearing his throat, his booming voice cracked like broken glass. "Your Honor," he started, stuttering slightly. "It is not what it appears." Before he could go on, the judge put up her hand. "Stop!" Her tone was frigid, without leeway for debate. "Don't make a mockery of this court with evasive responses. This is not a television game show, Mr. Brown. This is a court of law. Answer specifically." Tension mounted. A woman in the crowd gasped. A reporter wrote frantically, feeling the beginnings of history. Kody's lips opened and closed. He thrashed like a drowning man, searching for breath that refused to fill his lungs. He fidgeted with his tie, pulled at his collar, wiped perspiration from his forehead. Each little gesture betrayed his desperation. And then there was silence, chilling, crushing silence. The judge's eyes narrowed, her gaze fixed on him like a predator tracking prey. "Where did the money go?" she asked again, her tone slow, controlled. The courtroom leaned in as one, held breaths waiting for an answer that never materialized. The mood changed. Anticipation was replaced with rage and frustration, a shared request for the truth. Kody's former wives were scattered throughout the crowd, their faces a map of emotion. Christine's eyes flamed with anger and vindication, as if she had been waiting for this moment since time began. Janelle sat stiff, arms folded across her chest, lips pursed in a tight line. Meri's face was a mask, though her eyes watered with an unspoken tragedy. Robyn used a tissue to wipe at her eyes, her tears inexplicable. Were they for Kody or herself? The public was unremitting. They had followed the narrative for years. The promises, the betrayed trust, the whispers of secret riches, and now it all came together in one crucial moment. But Kody held his tongue. The judge's restraint was paper. Then she banged her hand on the bench, the report thundering. "Mr. Brown, this is your last warning. The court is not a game. You will explain where the money went, or we will move forward with repercussions that cannot be escaped." Kody's lawyer stood, trying to object, but the judge spoke sharply over him. "Sit down, counselor. Your client is fully aware of what I am demanding," he will respond. "This court is not going to be manipulated." Defeated. The lawyer settled back in his seat. Kody's lips quivered. He shifted uncomfortably, running his hand across the pile of papers on his desk. Though he apparently wasn't reading, his eyes skimmed the room again. This time, there was no sympathy, no backing, only hard glares calling for justice. At last, he took a shaky breath. His voice was low, hesitant, almost beguiling. "Your Honor, I don't know if I can," the judge cut in harshly. "You will, Mr. Brown, because if you don't, this court has no option but to assume the worst. And let me tell you, assumptions can be a lot harder to hear than the truth." The gravity of her words weighed upon them like a mountain. Whispers broke out across the room, spiraling louder by the second. "Did you hear that? He doesn't know where the money went." "Of course he does. He just won't say it. He is hiding something. He always hides something." The bailiff asked for order, but his voice was overridden. The strain was a living thing, crawling across the room like a fire. Kody slumped deeper in his chair, every whisper another jab. The walls closed in. The air thickened. His breathing was short and gasping. He was a trapped man, and everyone knew it. The judge was unyielding, firm. Her pen tapped deliberately against the bench, each click slow and ominous. "This court is offering you one last chance. Mr. Brown, the truth will be revealed, either from your mouth or from the evidence already mounting against you. I recommend you make a wise decision." Kody held the folder close, hands shaking. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. The silence continued, eternal and crushing. Then he spoke, finally shattering the silence. "Your Honor, the money, it is not where you think it is." Gasps coursed through the courtroom. Reporters pushed forward. Christine's eyes expanded. The judge sat up in her seat, but before he could go on, the gavel came down. "This session stands adjourned until Mr. Brown comes forward with the entire truth," she pronounced. Her voice was not open to disagreement. Kody's opportunity was lost. The bailiff yelled for order as the courtroom erupted into pandemonium. Murmurs grew into cries. Cameras flashed furiously. The truth lingered tantalizingly out of reach, still hidden. Kody leaned forward in his chair, white glistening and shattered, a man acutely conscious his secrets were closing in, pulse by pulse. The Brown family had been presented for years as an odd but compelling model of a non-traditional American family. Cameras trailed them laughing, fighting, having children, and working through the intricacies of a plural marriage. On television, Kody came across as a man committed to oneness and creating a legacy beyond himself. But backstage, from the scripted smiles and highlight, real snippets, cracks were beginning to show. By the time the truth came out in court, those cracks had become wide, unbridgeable chasms. And at the center of everything was money. Christine was the one who moved first in the midst of the wreckage. Fans had seen the tension years in the making, the tearful whispers, the strain of giving all for a marriage that gave so little back. On television, she once expressed, "I can't keep pretending everything is fine when it is not." The words pleased supporters. What most didn't understand, though, was that her worry wasn't necessarily romance or affection. It was survival, about money when she departed. She didn't only leave Kody behind, she left a financial nightmare. No matter how many hours they labored, no matter how much they made, it would disappear. She spoke in secret to friends. I would ask where the money was going, and the answers were always vague, always elusive. She wasn't alone in observing. Janelle had always been the practical, the planner type. As others kept house, she kept books, kept records, kept track. She was familiar with what the family made from TLC transactions, book sales, and public speaking. The amounts ought to have been sufficient to live in comfort. But life had other plans. Bills came piling in, project plans, such as constructing multiple houses on the family's Coyote Pass land, took an eternity. Money even seemed to come in when it should have, but it disappeared just as rapidly. Janelle began asking tough questions. Kody's responses were always tinged with irritation. He would wave her concerns away, redirect the conversation, or blame her for doubting his leadership. "Trust me," he would say. "I know what I'm doing." But Janelle wasn't convinced. Over the years, her doubt hardened into certainty. Something was very wrong. Meri, the first wife, had stayed with Kody longer than anyone expected. Even after betrayals, humiliations, and years of exclusion, She retained the conviction that their marriage counted. She wanted to believe in the family harmony dream, but even loyalty had its limits. When she found joint accounts being mysteriously depleted, when funds promised never arrived, she felt stupid. "I thought I was investing in our future," she whispered once, "but maybe I was just filling a void that could never be satisfied." Bitterness took hold in her heart. Although she wasn't the first to depart, the time arrived when she could no longer stand up for Kody. Robyn, the youngest wife, stayed with Kody. Some labeled it love, others desperation or denial. She wept when Christine turned her back, cried when Janelle walked away, and shook when Meri finally quit. Kody was not just a husband to Robyn, he was her protector, stability, and the father of her children. Even she, however, could not dismiss the persistent question plaguing everyone else. Where had the money gone? She publicly stood by him, waving the rumors off as rumors. Privately, however, she began to notice inconsistencies in the financial accounts he presented. As each wife left, viewers pieced together the story. Online forums buzzed with speculation. Some believed Kody was investing money or hidden assets. Others accused him of spending on himself, leaving the family to struggle. Tips spread like wildfire. Some said he diverted cash into other accounts to protect it legally. Others reported that he invested in hapless real estate deals in pursuit of a dream of land ownership that never panned out. The reality was elusive. One thing was certain. The family made millions during their on-air time, but when the smoke cleared, the wives were left fighting to make ends meet. Christine was forced to start from scratch. Janelle confessed she did not have the money she had anticipated. Meri held on to her small business as a lifeline. The riches that had appeared limitless had vanished. The betrayal rather than the lost money hurt more. Christine felt taken advantage of, her sacrifices disrespected. Janelle felt betrayed, her planning dismissed. Meri felt embarrassed, betrayed for her devotion. Even Robyn, who was sticking by Kody, felt the pain of shattered promises. They were not exempt. They saw their mothers fight, homes being destroyed, futures in limbo. The formerly big, happy family was a field of distrust and resentment. One older child explained, "We grew up on television, but we were living a fantasy. People thought we were wealthy. They hadn't witnessed the argument over money, the tension, the constant worry of being in short supply." By then, Kody's life as a father and husband was already in tatters. This hearing was not so much about law. It was the culmination of years of distrust, deception, and unresolved questions. Christine, arms crossed, eyes blazing with intensity, stood there watching him. Janelle sat in silence, but her silence was louder than any words. It was the silence of a person who had always known. Meri's eyes were brimming with tears, but even she was spent with sympathy. Robyn wiped at her own eyes, observing as the final threads of hope disintegrated. They weren't seeing a trial. What they were seeing was the final judgment on the man who had promised them everything and given them nothing. Christine's words rang in all of their minds. "It is like filling a bucket with holes with water. Whether we worked hard or not, the money would evaporate." One sentence encapsulated the whole tragedy. They had invested their time, love, labor, and faith in Kody's vision, and it had all seeped into oblivion. The bucket with holes was such a perfect metaphor for the Brown family's downfall. And now, in the courtroom, the world was curious about what had created those holes and who was to blame. The press lapped up the news headline, shouted, "Betrayal!" Talk shows discussed the missing money. Social media was filled with memes, conspiracy theories, and outrage. But for the wives, the children, and those who had at one time trusted Kody's dream, this was not entertainment. It was heartbreak. Years of sacrifice down the drain, trust broken. That is what made the courtroom so tense. It wasn't statistics on a document. It was destroyed families, broken commitments, and a man compelled to account for his decisions. As the second day wound down, it was apparent how trapped Kody was. He wasn't only responsible to a judge. He had to face his family, his public, and the world. The wives' testimony had established the precedent. Speculation had fueled the tension. Now reality was being pulled into the light. The man who had once faced cameras, boastful and proud, now stood cornered, stripped of delusions, the family shattered. The money was lost. All that was left was the truth, and the courtroom wasn't going to let him get out of it. The air within the courtroom was heavy, almost choking. You might hear the muffled buzz of fluorescent lights, The scratch of pens against paper, the slight creak of bodies adjusting in hard wooden chairs. Other than those faint noises, silence, clean, taut, like a strangled breath, prevailed. Kody Brown sat in the middle of it all. His eyes scanned the room nervously. His hands gripped the folder on the table in front of him, the papers shuddering. His jaws were clenched, lips pursed, but his pale face gave away the fear that lay inside. The judge's robe was folded crisply over the bench as she stared at him with cold, hard intensity. She had been patient for weeks, weeks of hearings. But now her patience was spent. She leaned forward, her voice slicing into the stillness like a knife. "Mr. Brown, this is your last chance. Where did the money go?" The words were not a query. They were an imperative, a verdict, a blow. A murmur traveled around the room, but it was killed at once beneath her icy stare. Everyone knew what was on the line. This wasn't about missing numbers on a balance sheet. It was betrayal, graft, and years of lies finally laid bare. Christine fidgeted in her seat, jaw clenched, arms crossed so tightly it seemed painful. Janelle's eyes remained fixed on Kody, hard and unflinching. Meri's face was impassive, though ripped asunder between anger and sorrow. Robyn, hands trembling, held a tissue, blotting her eyes and mumbling a soft prayer. They weren't witnessing a trial. They were seeing their lives shattered and laid bare. Before them, Kody's lawyer, a tidy man in a navy blazer, stood up suddenly. His voice was firm and practiced and audible to the entire courtroom. "Your Honor, respectfully, my client has a right to." The judge rapped her hand on the bench before he could get another word out. "Sit down, counselor," she growled, her voice ringing off the walls. "Your client has enjoyed rights. He has had time. He has had opportunities. What he hasn't had are answers. This court will have them today." The attorney froze, then sank dejectedly back into his chair. The message had been delivered. No more interruptions, no more delays. Kody was utterly alone. His breathing grew rapid, chest rising and falling in ragged, uneven gasps. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He pulled at his tie as if it were suffocating him, then released it altogether. His lips began to move soundlessly for a moment, as though practicing words he was too terrified to utter. For so long, he had been in control of his world. The story, the money, the family's destiny, but all here, under the unforgiving glow of fluorescent lights and the unyielding eye of the judge, all that control evaporated like sand between his fingers. In view of the whole room, once so confident, so commanding, he now looked like a caged animal. The judge was merciless, her eyes fixed on him like a hawk diving on prey, her voice glacial, every word slicing cleanly. "Millions went through your fingers, Mr. Brown. Book deals, appearances, contracts. Your wives profited, your family sacrificed, and when they departed, there was nothing. Not one dime. Where did the money go?" Her words lingered in the courtroom, unbending. Kody's lips quivered. He opened the folder on his desk and started flipping through the pages quickly. Although it was apparent, he wasn't actually skimming. One piece of paper slipped from his fingers and fell to the floor. Crouching down to pick it up was awkward, strained, a visible effort. At last, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. Low, his voice was trembling, each word drawn out as if it was something to cost him to speak. "Some of it," he started. Down at the papers, went on investments. A buzz swept the courtroom. The word was hanging there like smoke. The judge's eyes knitted investments. Be specific, Kody had to swallow hard, his Adam's apple bobbing up and down as if he was attempting to swallow the truth itself. "Some into land," he breathed. "Some into businesses." His voice stumbled. He nervously licked his lips before continuing. "Some into accounts." The judge leaned forward. "What sort of accounts?" Kody did not move. His fingers tightened around the folder, knuckles white. His gaze darted toward his attorney, who gave a barely perceptible shake of his head, cautioning him to be careful. But it was already too late. The judge leaned forward more forcefully. "Were these accounts in your name?" Kody's heavy silence hung in the air. He shifted restlessly in his chair, darting looks around the room. Cameras, his wives, all faces masks of judgment and disbelief and betrayal. Finally, the words emerged, stumbling but incriminating. "Not always." Gasps moved across the room. Pens scribbled paper in staccato beat. Reporters scribbled with furious speed, while the wives sat stone-faced. Christine's eyes widened in a mix of vindication and horror. Janelle shook her head, her mutter inaudible. Meri covered her mouth with her hand. Robyn began to weep. The judge banged his gavel for silence, but the room would not be still. The news was too big. Kody had confessed to directing money into accounts not under his control. Once the courtroom had finally come to order, the judge's voice shook with contained rage. "Mr. Brown, are you admitting to purposely hiding funds?" Kody was silent, the silence deafening. The judge's face hardened. "This is fraud, plain and simple. Do you comprehend the seriousness of what you just admitted?" His mouth moved, but he spoke no words. His lawyer leaned in, speaking quickly in a whisper. But the judge thumped her hand down before he could protest. "Counselor, if your client cannot or will not answer, this court will take his silence as assent." The words struck like lightning. Gasps built to a storm. Cameras popped, reporters tensed forward. The wives sat stiff with shock. Kody's kingdom of secrets was coming down around their ears. The room broke out. "He kept it a secret," someone cried from the back. "He lied for all those years," another shouted. "He stole from his own family." The bailiff asked for order, but it was too late. Disorder had taken over the courtroom. Christine rose, voice shaking but firm. "I knew it. I knew he was concealing money from us." The judge banged the gavel again and again, her voice a low, ominous growl. "Sit down, order, or I will have the courtroom cleared." Slowly, the uproar receded, but the air was still charged with tension, thick as a thunderhead waiting to explode. When the room at last fell silent, her voice dropped low, slicing like a knife. "Mr. Brown, this court has had enough of your wordplay. The games are over. If you believe you can just hide behind silence, then you are wrong. The truth will either reveal itself from you or from the evidence. We already have." "Be wise." Kody's shoulders sagged. His white face gazed blankly, eyes glassy. The confident patriarch of the past was lost. In his stead, a man gazed deep into his own destruction, open to all. There was a silence, heavy and painful. Pens hovered over sheets of paper. Cameras trained. The wives caught their breath. Finally, Kody breathed softly, almost inaudibly. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The judge sat back, allowing the words to linger for a moment, before he illustrated what it was intended to be. Kody's eyes were closed, his body shaking. But before he could continue speaking, the gavel slammed down. "This session stands adjourned," the judge declared. "Tomorrow Mr. Brown will come back, ready to elucidate every aspect or suffer penalties well beyond his comprehension." Pandemonium broke out all over again. The bailiff yelled for order, but the room was too chaotic. The wives spoke in hushed fury among themselves. Reporters rushed to splash the news. Kody stood numbed, broken, and speechless. The world now knew enough to know one fact. The truth was far darker and nearer than anyone might have guessed. When his words, "not always," slipped out, the courtroom changed. Gasps rippled like pebbles on water. Murmurs escalated into shouts. Whispers turned into accusations. Each individual on those benches had waited years to know the truth that they suspected. And with too little words, Kody had validated it. The air was charged with astonishment. Cameras flashed like lightning. Journalists sprang to their feet, pens scrawling wildly, phones snapping headlines that would make the rounds around the world in minutes. The bailiff bellowed once more, "Order, order in the court!" But his cry was engulfed by the bedlam. Christine spoke up first. Her voice trembled, but fury drove each sentence. "I knew it! I knew you were keeping money from us, Kody." Her words cut through the chaos. Every eye turned to her. She stood erect, shoulders squared, eyes burning with a combination of vindication and hurt. Years of betrayal spilled out in that one outburst. Janelle Christine trembled, her lips quivering. "We trusted you," she said, her voice clear as a bell. "We worked, we gave up, and you betrayed all of us." Meri sat, unmoving, tears streaming down her face. Her silence was more powerful than words. The silence of one who had hoped too long, fought too hard, only to be made a fool in the most cruel of ways. Then Robyn, she held a tissue so tightly that it ripped in her fingers. Her weeping was out of control. her frame jerking as though her world had broken apart in a moment. "No, no, Kody," she sobbed. "Tell me it isn't true, please. Tell me it isn't true." Kody had nothing to say. The crowd, supporters, journalists, and bystanders went ballistic. "He stole from them," a voice bellowed. "Those years on television were a con," another cried out. "He stole from his own family members just to line his pockets." The press gallery plunged into a whirlwind of reportage. Headlines were typed in real time. Kody Brown admits to secret accounts. Courtroom chaos. As sister wives patriarch outed. Fraud claims shake TLC celebrities. The once charismatic patriarch had become a sideshow of shame. The judge rapped her gavel over and over, her voice bellowing over the din. "Order. I will have order in this courtroom." But no order could be wrapped around the truth. It had blown like a bomb, and its effects were out of control. At last, the bailiffs moved forward, their presence sufficiently commanding to restore silence to the crowd. The bedlam receded, but tension still charged like electricity. The judge's face was a mask of stone, her eyes locked unflinching on Kody. "Mr. Brown," she cut her voice cold, "you've just confessed to directing money into accounts other than those that bear your name." The judge's words struck the air. "Do you understand the significance of what you've confessed?" she asked. Kody remained quiet, his silence being damning enough. "This is fraud," she announced, her tone as hard as stone. "This is deception at its most elevated level. You've betrayed your family, your people, and now you are charged with betraying this court." Each sentence struck like a hammer, heavier than the other. "You are no leader," she continued. "You are a manipulator, a man who sold himself to greed instead of duty. And today, the world sees you for what you are." The ensuing silence was stifling. Kody suddenly leapt from his chair, his voice cracking with urgency. "No, you don't understand," he exclaimed. "I was guarding the money. I was keeping it for the family." The judge raised her hand. "Sit down, Mr. Brown. Do not cloak your offenses with virtue." But Kody didn't relent. His words spilled out, wild and empty. "I didn't steal it. I didn't. I invested it. It was going to grow. It was going to be enough." The gavel came down, the judge's bellow ringing out. Quietness once more, but with a different heaviness. "Shame." Christine snapped it, her tone cut with contempt. "Investments?" she hissed. "You mean lies. You lied to us. Told us we were broke when you were holding money. We all contributed." Janelle's anger flared, her words shaking with fury. "You made us think we couldn't afford to buy groceries for a few weeks. You told us the land was out of our reach. And all along, you were squirreling money in hidden accounts." Even Meri, who had remained silent for so long, finally found words. Her voice was quiet, but each word cut like a knife. "You didn't only shatter our trust, Kody. You dismantled it." The judge looked at them, her expression softening momentarily. "I hear your outrage," she said. "But justice will arrive here, in this courtroom." Robyn slumped into her chair, weeping hysterically. "He is not a criminal," she wailed. "He is my husband, the father of my children. Please, no." But her eyes told the truth. She had always suspected, deep down inside, and now she couldn't help but admit it. The judge's eyes grew cold once more as they turned back to Kody. "You took advantage of everyone who ever trusted in you. Your wives, your children, your people. The proof of your culpability is indisputable. And this court will not let such dishonesty go unrepaid." Kody slumped into his seat, his head in his hands. He was no longer a patriarch, just a broken man, crushed under the weight of his own avarice. In the rear of the courtroom, journalists rushed to file updates. Before long, headlines blazed across the web. Judge criticizes Kody Brown for fraud in sizzling courtroom confrontation. Mayhem breaks out as sister wives star embarrassed. Former wives sue Kody for secret money. Outside, the world was in a frenzy. Twitter was ablaze. Hashtags trending as fans and critics analyzed every word and every tear. Kody wasn't just a figure from a reality television show anymore. He was a warning. The courtroom finally quieted down, but it would never be the same again. Kody slumped in his seat, face white, paying no heed to his lawyer's insistent whispers. He was beaten, dignity shed, humiliated. For years he had built an image, a man of faith, of family, of authority. But within one afternoon, that facade crumbled. His wives no longer observed a leader. His children no longer observed a role model. The public no longer observed a star. They all observed the reality, a man destroyed by greed. The judge brought up her gavel. This court will adjourn to pronounce sentence. Let me be absolutely clear. Fraud of this kind has serious repercussions. Mr. Brown, your future is in jeopardy. The gavel came down, hard and final. The room became a tumult again. Shouts, whispers, gasps. Christine wiped away her tears, but stood tall. Janelle stood firm, unmoved. Meri remained quiet, however, tears flowing steadily down her cheeks. Robyn held on tightly to the remaining hope still burning in her heart, and Kody sat immobile, eyes glassy, fixed rigidly before him, as though the burden of his own destruction had only then come down upon him. The courtroom, chastened to its very foundations by what had been heard, steeled itself for what was to follow. The judge's face was chiseled from granite, her voice hard and unsympathetic, as she spoke the sentence that doomed Kody Brown. Bailiff, take Mr. Brown into custody, effective immediately. The chamber exploded in a universal gasp, the breath drawing the air out of the room. Christine took in a sharp breath, shocked. Janelle closed her eyes, silently tears trickling down her face. Meri clapped a shaking hand over her mouth, holding back a sob that rent the silence. And Robyn fell into her seat, grasping her chest as if the decree itself had attacked her. The bailiff, tall and steady, came forward without hesitation. His boots crashed onto the wooden floor, each heavy step sounding menacingly. He reached Kody's table, his hand resting on the cuffs on his belt. Kody Brown, he ordered. Stand up! Kody jolted as if a current had passed through him, his eyes wide with fear. Wait, just wait a second, he stuttered, voice shaking. This isn't necessary, I can explain. Stand up. The bailiff's voice remained unshaken. The room shifted forward, breath held in expectation. At last, the ruin of the former power patriarch had finally come. Kody pushed his chair back, hands raised as if to deflect the inevitable. His voice rose higher, shaking with urgency. Please, Your Honor, you don't understand. This was all a mistake. I wasn't stealing. I was protecting. I did it for my family. The judge's eyes snapped into focus, her response laced with ice and venom. Mr. Brown, your family is sitting in back of you. They are the ones you betrayed. Do not desecrate this court with meaningless excuses. The words cut into him. He looked at his wives, hoping for some kind of support, but seeing only unyielding faces, anger, disappointment, and sorrow glaring back. The bailiff grabbed his arm. The clicking of metal handcuffs releasing shot through the room like a bullet, startling the audience. No, please! Kody shouted, his tone shrill with fear. He struggled against the bailiff's grasp, but the officer didn't budge. Don't make this more difficult than it has to be. The bailiff growled. The first cuff snapped shut with a sharp click. Gasps echoed across the courtroom as cameras flashed, capturing the image, Kody Brown. Once the emblem of authority, bound in chains he never imagined for himself. But he didn't go quietly. Kody twisted in his seat, shouting frantically. You can't do this! I'm not a criminal! I'm not! The bailiff hauled him upright, gripping his arm tightly. You are arrested for financial impropriety. He read flatly. Kody attempted again, words tumbling quickly and in desperation. It was all for them. For my family. I never meant to harm anyone. Christine stood, her tone slicing with anger. Stop fibbing. Kody, you harmed us every day you had that money. Her words paralyzed him for a moment, his face contorted between shame and anger. Christine's eyes, burning with years of distrust, didn't flinch as his pleaded with hers. She slowly shook her head, her lips twisting in a bitter smile. You always thought you were the smartest of all of us, she whispered. Now look at you. Janelle brushed her tears away and stood too. We gave you everything, Kody. Our trust, our work, our lives, and you took it all and discarded it. This is your fault, Meri whispered, lips quivering. I stood up for you too long. I can't stand up for you anymore. Next to her, Robyn's weeping turned more brutal, her hands quivering out of control. Please, don't take him, she implored. He isn't a bad man. He is just lost. But her words fell on deaf ears. The judge spoke, She raised her gavel, voice calm and firm. Mr. Brown, you stand convicted of fraud and financial malfeasance. The facts are clear. Your efforts to excuse yourself have been unsuccessful today. Your accounting begins. This court stands in recess. Bang, the gavel fell, determining his fate. The bailiff secured the second cuff home. Click, both wrists locked. Kody slumped, shoulders dipping under the pressure of the metal. Please, he breathed once more, voice cracking. Please, but there was no mercy. The bailiff urged him ahead. Footsteps boomed resoundingly through the silent room. Cameras flashed wildly, freezing the moment that would be splashed across front pages for weeks. Kody Brown, head dipped, wrists cuffed, being led out in humiliation. As he walked by his wives, Kody looked into their faces one last time. Christine averted her face. Janelle's icy glare never wavered. Meri closed her eyes, refusing to see. Robyn hid behind her hands, unable to watch. The greatest punishment for Kody wasn't the shackles or the arrest. It was that he had lost them all forever. Outside, pandemonium broke out. Reporters mobbed him, microphones aloft, cameras rolling live. Reality television star Kody Brown was just arrested. One yelled, "The Sister Wives patriarch is charged with fraud following a dramatic courtroom battle." Another shouted, "The fall of a man who once said he had it all," a third recited. The world witnessed Kody being pushed into the rear of an awaiting police cruiser. The door slammed shut with conviction. Within the courtroom, silence hung in the air. Christine let out a shaking breath. "It is over," she whispered. "It is finally over." Janelle put a hand on her elbow. "No, it is only beginning. Now the truth will finally be revealed." Meri wiped away tears, her own voice torn with sorrow. "He was supposed to be our protector, our leader. Instead, he ruined everything." Robyn swayed back and forth in her chair, mumbling to herself, "He is not a criminal. He is not." But even she didn't believe it anymore. The courtroom doors clanged behind Kody and the bailiff, the noise echoing like a death sentence. The man who had stood at the head of a vast clan once, teaching loyalty, love, and togetherness, now departed in shackles, a shattered man. The gallery was silent. Reporters, onlookers, wives, they all understood they had just seen history. And with the ring of the gavel still fresh in their heads, one reality hung heavy in the air. When faith is broken, when greed trumps love, when you believe you can outrun the law, justice will always catch up with you.